majority of the sessions. Kingshuk, I know, I think he has attended almost all, right, Kingshuk?
So missed the last one.
You
This is
missed
the third session of it. Yeah,
Okay.
the last one. I was there in the first one.
All right. Okay. So who else? I think Mohammed Nadeem, you have been attending, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So this is the fourth session which we are going to have, right? So in the last three sessions we have covered at least more than I mean a little less than half of our subject. So this is the right time to have a quiz. We had mentioned in the last class that we are going to have a quiz. So if you have attended the sessions and have been paying attention, this quiz should be easy for you. All right. So we'll have a review quiz today in the first half. All right. So yeah, I think you would know this visual. We have shown it in the last three classes. So the insight from this metaphor, that is carpenter with only a hammer as a tool, right? The whole world looks like a nail to the person having only one tool, which is a hammer. So which of the four do you think is the correct answer? So what I would suggest is you have access to the chat box. So answer should be in the chat box. Go ahead. Okay, somebody says option 3. This is Anupam says option 3. King Suk says yeah 3. Vinita says none of the above. Shivani says 3. Okay, go ahead, all of you, the rest of you. Okay, Namita 3. All right, let's see what the answer is. Yeah, correct. The answer is 3. Knowing the fundamentals will help you in developing tools suitable to solve different problems. Right. So, anybody would like to elaborate on why this is the right answer?
May I attempt, sir?
Yeah, please.
Actually, it's important to know the fundamentals. Then you can, no two situations are going to be similar. If you know the fundamentals, then you can adapt to the situation at hand and develop appropriate response actions or interventions to meet that particular requirement. The metaphor is actually, if I remember correctly, though I could not attend your last two classes, but I saw the videos, and what you had mentioned was that it is not that the expertise in a particular field makes a person approach the problem only from that perspective. That may not be the most appropriate thing to do.
Right, right. Okay. Anybody else? Thanks, Anupam. Thanks, Eta. Namita, you have something to say?
This is Benita here.
Yeah, Benita.
The carpenter with only hammer as a tool sees the world as a nail. So it is basically whatever tool he has in hand, he'll try to solve the problem in that way.
Yeah.
So in that way, yes, basically every problem you focus on the solution, how to get to it, and you merge it with with whatever resources you have and are able to solve it. So 3 is very near to the solution based on that.
Right.
But I found it not to be okay because it also showed that if you have only hammer, then you'll see the world as a nail. Now that is also a problem.
Okay. All right. So,
sir,
go ahead.
Sir, I think that the term that knowing the fundamentals will, if somebody understands the fundamentals well, they can further develop any strategy to solve the problems. If the fundamentals are clear, they can, of course, use those fundamentals for solution of any problem. That's what I think, sir.
Right. Okay. So, see what happens is, okay, tell me, hammer, does it have any use other than hammering down a nail?
Yes, it can be used to pluck out the nail also.
To pluck
from
out
the
the
other
nail?
side.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else? Let's have a brainstorming session on this, right? So, what could be the uses of a hammer? One is to hammer down a nail. Second, you said to pluck out a nail. What else? Okay, it's a question which is
to
open
measure
to
something.
everyone. Yeah, to smash something.
To measure something also.
To measure something. If you know the length of the hammer, you can, suppose it's a foot, then you can measure something. If it is 2 hammers, means 2 feet, right? Yeah.
Make something straight or flatten.
So it can be used as a teaching tool as well. It can be used for breaking the groundnut.
Yes.
Hammer. We doctors use a delicate hammer for reflex action of the muscles.
For reflex, very good. Reflex action, yes, right. Very good. So now you're getting the hang of it. You can see the hammer only as a one trick pony, and that is to hammer down a nail, or you can see a hammer as a versatile tool. And once you know the fundamental as to what are the properties of the hammer, then you can use it for different solutions, different problems to solve. Like you can actually use the hammer as a door stopper, right? You can use the hammer for marking a page in a book. You can use the hammer for, I mean, your imagination is the whatever you can think of, right? Your imagination is the key as to what all you can use the hammer for, right? So taking this metaphor to OD and change management, we have, let me see where the noise is coming. Okay, I'm muting. All right. Okay. So taking this metaphor to the various models which we talked about during our discussion on change management. Like we talked about the McKinsey model, 7S model, we talked about theory O, theory E, we talked about, briefly talked about Levin's freezing, unfreezing model. So if you know that those models, you can fit those models to to as one of the components in solving a organizational problem, right? So don't think that you are stuck with a hammer. A hammer would have several uses, provided you know the fundamentals as to what a hammer stands for. All right, moving on to the next question, which is yeah. So I want you to write down your answer again in the chat box. Complete the code. Planned organization change dash. So fill in the blank. Okay. So Urbasi, Vijinder, Anupam, Dr. Puspa. Okay. All of you are saying two. That is, he's managing the future from the present, right? Murlidhar, Kingsuk, Namita. All right. Okay, good. So which means you have been taking notes and paying attention. So planned organization change is managing the future from the present, right? So anybody would like to comment on this? Planned organizational change is managing the future from the present. Anybody would like to elaborate a little bit?
Sir, we had discussed it during, I think, your first or second session only.
Mm-hmm.
There are many organizations which have perished, which have not seen the future from the present, like Kotak and other organizations. So presently, uh, I mean, what is the situation in the future? You envision that, and accordingly, you plan ahead the changes in the organization. That
Yeah.
is, yes, sir. That is,
Okay.
I think that is what I understand from this term.
Yeah.
May
Yeah.
I, sir?
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Every organization has a product which it's selling. It could be a service, it could be a physical entity.
Right.
Like is the norm in the business, every product has a definite life cycle. After a particular certain point in time, the competitors will catch up. The competitive advantage that the product gives to the company is going to disappear, is going to reduce, and ultimately it is going to disappear.
Right.
So therefore, when the company is on the upswing, instead of allowing the hubris to set in,
Yeah.
that's the time when company needs to start planning on the future. That as and when this product reaches the end of its life cycle, what next? How can the revenues be sustained or improved further from what it is? That is how the future has to be managed from the point at the present. Once the product or the revenues from that particular product reach stagnation levels, that is your growth flattens out. That's just prior to that is the tipping point before which you need to start thinking or need to start thinking of and implementing the change for the future. Otherwise, you will thereafter be only trying to stem the tide of losing or of reducing revenues. It is best undertaken when the revenues are still robust. You have space in terms of time as well as money to plan for the future product.
Right. Perfect. Anupam, thank you so much. Let's take the example of IBM. IBM started, I think, in mid-50s or early 60s, right? And they were actually huge, humongous, and they were called the Big Blue, and they were head and shoulders above all other companies in the world who were into computer business. So they were actually into hardware, into making computers. So somewhere down the line, to in mid 80s or early 90s, they decided that the world of IT is not hardware, but it's going to be software. And they sold their business lock, stock, and barrel to Lenovo, and they moved to an area which was totally alien to them, to software, to consulting, right? And they reinvented themselves and of course they were working on it before they sold the computer business to Lenovo. But it was kind of a clean break from their past, and there you are, like they retained their market leadership in software, in consulting, in networking, and there you are. They planned their organization change from the present, and they looked at the future, what the future holds, and they responded to the future, right? But if you look at, say, Kodak, or if you look at Nokia, right? They did exactly the opposite, right? What Anupam mentioned is the hubris, right? So they were huge market leaders in the product which they were selling. Nokia was the product leader for mobile phones. Kodak was the product leader for photographic paper, and they were not only market leaders, they were actually controlling almost 70 to 80% of the world market, right? That's unheard of. Still, Kodak from 1996 to 2003, 1996, they were controlling almost 80% of the market, and by 2003 they were gone, right? Similarly, Nokia in mid 80s and 90s till late 90s, they were the market leader. Mobile phone was Nokia, and no other company would come near them. And where is Nokia now? It's gone. It's vanished from the face of the earth, right? So either you try and look at the future and you fight for your place in the sun in the future, or you stand on your hubris and fade away. The choice is yours, right? So planned organization change is managing the future from the present. All right, the next one. Go ahead. What is organizational change? Again on the chat box. Okay, Anupam says it's a planned alteration of organizational components to improve effectiveness of the organization. All right. Who else? Urbusi says yes. Shivani, Vijinder. Okay. All right. So let's see what the answer is. Okay, yeah, all of you are right. Okay. So it's a planned alteration of organizational components to improve effectiveness of an organization. All right. So any idea what could be the organizational components which needs to be altered? Or which components can actually be altered? Any idea?
The product or the service.
The products, the services, what else?
It could be the structure.
Organization structure, very
It could
good.
be the organizational process.
Organization structure, organization process.
It could be the people of the organization.
People,
And
very
it could
good.
be the organizational culture.
Very good, very good. So you people have captured all. So it can be the product, it can be the process, it can be the organizational structure, it can be the systems and processes, it can be the people, it can be the culture of the organization. All these things are, they lend themselves for change, right? So depending on where the organization finds itself, it'll decide what to change, right? So another question, which is
May I,
yeah,
before
please go ahead.
could you give any examples, sir,
Yeah.
of an organization where the cultural values of the organization have changed over a period of time? Products and processes is all understood. People, structures, everything is understood. But an organization takes time to build up that value, or value system, or the culture of the organization.
Yeah.
Theoretically, we do talk of organizational cultures changing, but practically, is there any example? At least I have not
Okay.
come across any, sir.
All right. Okay. So let me give an example from my own experience, right? So this is a company which is a very old company. They are into transport. The name of the company is Transport Corporation of India, or in short, it is TCI, right? So they are a company which came into being, I think, in early 60s. So around what 40, 60 years of existence. And they started off as a company with trucking business. They would actually transport bulk goods by means of trucks to different parts of the country. So basically, it was a trucking company, right? So the way trucking company operates is that they don't give you a timeline within which they will transport your goods from one place to the other. So whenever they have a truckload, they would dispatch it in a truck. They would either own the whole fleet of trucks, or they would hire trucks and send it to them. All right. So quite unlike say a company like, say, Federal Express, or even Blue Dart, where they would actually tell you that your parcel will reach the destination within, say, 48 hours or within 3 days. So they give you a timeline. So these guys, their culture is that jab hoga hoga type. Right? So now, somewhere down the line, in early mid 90s, they said, let's get into the parcel business, which is the business in which Blue Dart is, or the business in which DHL is, or the business of Federal Express. So they basically transport the parcels which are not bulk goods, and they will give a timeline within which we will reach your destination, right? So they got it right. Now what happened was, what do they once they, so it started off as a new vertical of the same TCI group. It became a new vertical, a new department, which they called the express business, and they called it TCI Express. Now, TCI Express, where would they get the people from? They got the main people from TCI, which was the trucking company. Now, the people who came from TCI, so they have imbibed the trucking culture, which is a laid back culture. like होगा होगा नहीं होगा नहीं होगा type. And जब माल आ जाएगा हम भेज देंगे. So that's the culture from which these people came. Now, express business does not allow this kind of culture to succeed. So the this particular business, it came to be managed by the younger son of the owner, Mr. Agarwal. And the younger son, he came from abroad. He did his MBA from abroad, and he saw that this is not the way to do express business, and he wanted to bring in a sense of urgency, a culture of urgency into the organization. And he enlisted my company's support to do that. So our brief was that bring in a culture of urgency to this particular organization. Now we started with a dipstick survey as to what the current culture is and where they want to take the culture to where they want to take the culture of the organization. And we used Eight Shines dipstick diagnostic tool to do this particular survey. And we gave a presentation to the management, to the managing director, and he engaged us for about 9 months to try and bring about culture change. Although we had told specifically that culture change, like Anupam mentioned, that it takes time. It takes anywhere between 3 to 5 years for any visible change in the culture. And we started the process of addressing the sense of urgency. We used the model, a different model of Cotter, model of there is actually a book, Sense of Urgency by Cotter. So we use that model of Cotter, and in 9 months' time, of course, it is too lesser time for culture change, but we trained their employees to a certain extent. We even went up down to the level of the driver and the conductor for the training programs, which had just started, but the MD got he got impatient actually why things are not happening. Although we had warned him that culture change does take time. And in 9 months' time, this particular project was truncated. But yes, that the lesson from this experience is that culture does take time, and you cannot be impatient, and culture change does not happen overnight. And you have to, it's like bamboo, right? It'll take its own time. It'll take its own time to flower. But if you get impatient, things will not work, right? So yeah, so this is a real life example of how culture change happens, and how culture change should not be done, right? And not in 6 to 9 months time. It takes time, right? Does that answer your question, Anupam?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Can we also say that the culture of the working of the government offices what is now sought to be changed, that there should be a little more urgency in the way the government works, etc. That will also be a part of an organizational change that is being brought in.
Sure.
In the same lines as what you were mentioning for TCI.
Sure. So,
Right.
but again, it takes time. It takes time, and it cannot be with the fiat of the political process. It cannot be by a circular or order of the government of the day. So the culture has to change gradually, and it has to take root, and there has to be a process of doing it. Like recently, you might have read in the newspapers that there is a body which is called Central no PSB, Public Enterprises Selection Board, right?
PESB.
PSB. And PSB, ever since it was established in the 50s, the head of the PSB and the members have always been IS officers or people from the bureaucracy. This is the first time ever they have recently they appointed Mallika, I think Srinivasan, who is the chairman of TAFE, a private sector company, as the head of PSB. And they have appointed one more member also from the private sector. And mind you, PSB, it picks up and appoints the board of directors and the CMD of public sector enterprises, right? So this is the first time ever a private sector person is in charge of picking the CMD and directors of public sector.
What organizations design
Center.
organization structure? Basically, it's
Sorry, come again.
the hierarchy.
I'm not able to get you. Who is online? Anybody wants to say something?
Okay, that was somebody else, sir, but I also wanted, this is Benita here. I wanted to ask about organizational change. That is it always planned? Sometimes, for example, the COVID situation forced many organizations to go digital, but that was not a planned alteration, right? So why should organizational change be said as a planned alteration?
See, when COVID happened and there was sudden lockdown and all, right? So as soon as it started, maybe there was no planning, and people had to scramble for keeping the organizational wheels running. But once they were into it for a month or so, or a couple of months, after that the planning started, right? You don't sustain work from home for months together without planning. So the planning did take place. I'm sure it would have happened in your organization also in a planned manner afterwards. Yes, willy-nilly they had to scramble to get their work to act together in the first couple of months. But after that, yes, the planning did take place, especially for the new joiners. Like I was associated with L&T Construction. They were one of the first companies sometime in July or August. They had a group of engineers whom they wanted to hire. They had offered, they had made campus offers. And unlike many organizations who did not allow their campus recruits to join, L&T Construction did allow these people to join, and they did their onboarding also online, during which I was involved for about 3-4 days of their onboarding. And they took these people on, and by December, I think they allowed them to join at their projects.
Sir, can't hear you. There's some kind of a background noise that's coming from somewhere, sir.
From somewhere? Okay. So let me see. Let me mute all. So my request to all of you is, once you have spoken, please mute yourself. And when you want to speak again, please unmute. So everybody is allowed to unmute themselves. But as soon as you have spoken, please mute yourself again. All right. Okay. So, all right. So does that answer your question, Vinita? That although some changes may happen due to certain scenarios or certain requirements in the environment, but for the change to sustain, the planning has to be done. Without planning, the change cannot sustain itself.
Yes,
Right?
sir. Got
Even during COVID times, this thing happened. That after a couple of months, all work from homes have been very planned, right? In fact, it has been seen that in 2020, the productivity of many sectors, especially the IT sector and the pharma sector, medical, they actually improved over the previous year, right? So and without planning, it cannot happen, right? So there must have been, and there have been plannings for the productivity rise to happen. All right. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. So what is this image popularly known as? You have seen this image again on your chat box. Okay. Anupam says 7S model. Okay. All right. So all of you agree that this is McKinsey's 7S model, right? Okay. So yeah, correct. So who were the authors of this model? Do you remember?
I think, sir, Tom Peters and Robert Waterman.
Yes, Peters and Waterman. They were the the book which they have written,
In Search of Excellence.
In Search of Excellence. Very good, very good. Okay, so the first three S's, that is strategy, structure, and systems, they go by a particular name. They are called the hard S.
Hard skill.
Hard S. And the three which are below shared values, that is skills, staff, and style, they are called the
Soft S.
soft S's, right? And shared values, the seventh S, is the glue which actually binds all these 6 S's together. All right. Okay. All right. So the next one. Okay. what is the use of the 7S framework? Okay, so it varies between 4 to 3. Okay. So 1 obviously is not there. Okay, so it's useful. Second is it identifies the important components of an organization and the integral ways in which they are connected to each other. So obviously this is correct. It can be used to understand that change cannot be made to one part of the organization without considering its ramifications on the other part. Again, that is true, right? So both 2 and 3 are correct, which means number 4, right? Okay, so both 2 and 3 are correct. So it identifies the important components of an organization. And what are those important components? They are strategy, structure, systems, style, staff, and skills. And they are all interconnected. Like structure would be interconnected with strategy, with systems, with skills, style, and staff. So basically, in the 7S model, they look at the 7S model as a system, right? And what happens in a system is all the components in a system are interconnected. So any change into one particular component would have uh, ramifications and effect on other also other components also. Say for example, suppose your organization has a performance management system, right? Which is individual based, right? Which means that every individual employee is appraised for his or her performance in the previous appraisal year, and depending on the performance and the rating, the payout is given, the increments and incentives and other rewards are given based on the rating, right? So is this how your organization's performance appraisal works? Whosoever is working, is this how it works? Yes or no? It's all individual basis, or you can get increment, higher increment based on your colleagues' rating.
Yeah, the bell curve.
Bell curve, right? So but even after the bell curve, your increment is based on your rating, right? Whichever you are in the top 10% or bottom 5% or middle percent, middle 60-70%, your increment will be based on that, right? So now suppose in your organization a new CEO comes, right? And he says that enough of competition, I would want people to collaborate, right? So he wants interpersonal collaboration as a mantra or uh, uh, the philosophy of the organization or the corporate value of the organization to change from whatever it was to collaboration. Like collaboration has to happen between employees, between departments, between units, right? So now once this philosophy is adopted in the organization, it's an organization-wide corporate value, which the CEO, new CEO has mandated. How will that affect the performance management system? Think about it. Will it affect the performance management system of your organization? Vinita.
Yes,
Tell us.
sir.
Tell
I
us.
think it would, because the entire KRAs and KPIs would change how your performances were, because teamwork would get more weightage.
Yeah.
And how you perform in a team would definitely start getting more weightage rather than individual performance.
Correct. Right.
So the entire parameters would change drastically.
Exactly. So you cannot have a corporate value, right, of collaboration, keeping all other components of the organization intact, right? It won't work. It won't work. Will it affect the organization structure? The organization structure, which say currently is on a hierarchical basis, and you have department functionally divided organization. You have a HR department, you have a finance department, you have a operational department, right? So will that affect?
Yes, and it might change into a matrix sort of organization from
Exactly. Very good. So I'm happy that you people are thinking. You people are thinking, right? So the components in the organization are all interlinked, right? So if you tweak any of the components, you have to necessarily tweak other components in that particular system, else it will fall flat, right? In fact, last to last year, I was taking a paper in IIM Raipur. The name of the paper is HPWS. Yeah. So the name of the paper was HPWS. HPWS stands for High Performing Work Systems, right? So now, what happens is that there's a startup, and the startup has HR department, or when it started, it would have just one HR person, right? And that HR person would look after everything as far as the human resources concerned, like recruitment and payroll, training, everything, performance management, talent management, everything. Now, once the organization grows, it'll add to the HR department. You have a separate talent acquisition person, a separate training person, a separate say payroll person. Now the various HR processes will come into being as and when people get added to that to HR department, and some system will predate others. Then the person who is handling performance management, he or she would have more number of people to assist him. And what happens over the years is there are legacy systems, there are new systems which come into being, and the empire building starts. Like everybody falls in love with their own areas, and they start building their own empires, right? So now, when a new philosophy collaboration, or philosophy like say or matrix organization, or similar, or maybe some new concept like organization network, ONA, needs to be introduced into the organization. then what happens is everybody is so protective of their territory that they are reluctant to let go of the power which they are wielding in their own areas. And what happens is the different systems, they, instead of working in tandem, they would actually be working at cross purposes, right? PMS system, which is individual based, it will continue, whereas the need of the hour is collaboration. I'm not saying that the HR will fall flat, but it'll move at a snail's pace, right? Because everybody is not pulling together, right? And the HPWS, the concept is basically to look at all the systems, the legacy systems, the new systems, everything, and put them in different buckets, right? And address each bucket at a particular point at a time, and then try and see how the buckets themselves can be tweaked to work in tandem with each other, so that the entire department as well as the entire organization would pull in the same direction, right? That is the concept of HPWS, high performing work systems. I mean, I give you an example of only HR, but it works for all the functional areas. I mean, in fact, going forward, each of the functional area in the organization would form a bucket, individual buckets, and the task will be for HPWS expert will be to how to make these buckets to work together and to achieve the organizational goal. So it's a similar concept. The 7S framework is also a similar concept, where you'll have to not only look at, I mean, every time you want to make a change in any of the 7S, whether you want to make a change in the structure or the system or the staff, the skills, strategy, or even the values, a new owner comes and he or she comes with a different set of values. Then if you are just looking at only one of the 7 components and trying to change that, it's bound to end in failure. So you have to see the interlinkages, you have to see how each component is linked to the other, and try to address the interlinkages rather than only 1 or 2 components in the 7S framework. All right. Okay. Next is why do organizations change? This we discussed yesterday, and sorry, in the last class. So if you remember, so into your chat box. Okay. Anupam says number 1. All right, good. Anybody else? Number 1 is as a reaction to adversity in the present to prepare for the future and based on learning from the past. Okay, so all 3. Okay. Namita says 3, which is both 1 and 2 above, for near-term economic improvement or to build organizational capabilities. Okay. All right. All right. So let's look at what the answer is. Both 1 and 2 above. All right. Okay. So the option number 2, right? Option number 2 goes by what? The name of that option number 2. Theory what?
Theory E, sir.
Theory E and theory O, right? For near-term economic improvement is theory E.
Yes.
To
And
build organizational capability is theory O, right? Okay. So any idea who gave those theories? Do you remember? Beer and Noria. Okay, right. Cracking
second
the,
one, not sure, but first one is Michael Pearce.
yeah. Second one is Beer and Noria. Those are the 2 people who had given. Right. Okay. Okay. Coming to the next one. When should organizations change? At what point? Okay. Vinita says 3. Rajiv 3. Shivani 3. Anupam says A and B. Okay. Point D. Okay. Rajiv says point D. Kingshu says point D. All right. Okay. So Rajiv and Kingshu, would you like to explain why your view is point D? At point D, the organization should change.
Sir, I would like to take it forward.
Yeah.
A few moments back, Anumam talked about PLC, product life cycle.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if I look at the particular curve, the C and D portion are on the, the stagnation stage where the product is like okay types. And now if I look at the graph from D to E, it is on the decline stage. So my perspective is like at the point D, the organization is basically trying to assimilate whether the product should survive or we should tweak it to reintroduce into the market. Okay. So a change is basically required at the D point, because from the growth stage, A, B, and C, they signify the growth pattern of the product or the organization as such, as the health of the organization. So that is why I chose D. Like when you know that when you are at the decline stage, you basically go ahead and tweak something, or you bring about a massive change or a small change or whatsoever. So hence D.
That may not work, sir, because at this point in time, the fiscal space as far as the organization is concerned is already constrained. Their revenues have flattened out, and very soon the product is going to fade away into oblivion. They neither have time nor do they have fiscal space to make any major changes. It is actually like surgery to a cancer that has been detected at the final stage. You may survive, you may not survive. Point A and B is planning for the future. You are expecting the product to plateau out at a particular point in time, and you have already started planning. You have got plenty of fiscal space to plan for the future.
Right. Okay. Kingshuk, your take. Let's hear your take. Sorry. Rajiv, you're saying something, right?
Sir, my take is on this is A is falling into embryonic stage, B is falling into growth stage, C and D are consistent performer stage, and from D it is going to be decline. And in the growth life cycle, at the point where you reach up to decline, you try to shade it out, or you have to have a revival stage.
Right.
And therefore, at that point of time, you need to have a strategy for organizational change.
Okay. So your point is D, right?
My point is D. Yes.
Okay.
based on the growth life cycle, which is explained in the figure.
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Kingshuk, you have also said point D.
Yes, sir. I stick to D.
Rationale. What is your rationale?
So the same as before, that at the D point, it is as such that we have observed that the organization is on a decline phase.
Yeah.
Because if you look at from D to E, the graph is deteriorating down.
Yeah.
So D is the exact point where we should sit together and bring about a change where the organization should shake up.
Okay. All right.
So a change intervention is needed there in D.
Okay. See,
I'll take an example here also.
Okay.
I'll take an example here.
Please go.
Now, you took an example of Nokia, right?
Yeah.
Now, when Nokia came into the picture, if I take A point as the embryonic stage, so Nokia was at a growth phase. They brought in a lot of products, and then they reached a pinnacle of C, right? And after a few years, they were stagnant to C to D. And finally, when all the competitors actually caught up to their idea of what a phone should be, Nokia basically started declining. They were overconfident in their particular area. They could not bring about a change, and hence they went into an oblivion as such. So had Nokia decided to go ahead with a change in their product, they could actually sustain themselves back.
Yes, so they should have done it at what point? That is the issue. They should have started experimenting with a new product at point C where they were actually growing. So they could have afforded.
Exactly. Now, if I talk about the competitor side, if you look at Samsung, they were smart enough and they took two product cannibalization. So every other model that they bought was basically a tweaked version of the earlier cell. So hence Samsung stayed in the industry, Nokia faded out.
Right. So
can I say something, sir?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, here whatever is related to Nokia and other technological company, I would like to emphasize that alongside this growth life cycle, we need to consider technology life cycle also, and which is having a different characteristics. Right. So in combined hybrid strategy, we have to come to the conclusion that what kind of organizational change is required. That is my take. Thank you, sir.
Right. Okay. So there is a term called time to market. Okay. What is time to market?
A new product, when it is launched, it requires some time to be accepted by the market. That and that is before, like that is where after it is marketed, accepted by the market, it will reach the growth stage. So it requires a gestation period.
Right. Even for developing that product, you require time, right? It's not that at point D you decide that yes, I want to have a new product, and you launch a new product, right? So it takes time for you to think of a product which the customer would need and require, and you need R&D to make that product. You need time to test out that product in a pilot market, and then you can launch, right? All these things may take anywhere between say 3 to 7 years, right? So if you are starting this process, this 7-year period at point D, you're already on the decline, right? Okay. And like Anupam said, where would you have the money here? Because your product is on the decline, and your revenue stream has been constricted, and you are fighting for survival. Where would you get the money to invest in a new product, invest in R&D, and wait for 7 years to launch that product, right? So basically you need to think of a change at point B because here you have the money and you have the comfort that your product is doing well in the market, right? And unless you do something at this point, when you reach point C, you are already on the decline, right? And you reach point D means you are actually in a downward phase, right? So if you look at the product life cycle, right, this is how the product life cycle moves, right? Okay, so if you do not start your next product at this point, you have missed the bus, because you cannot start a product researching for a product here, because next is your downfall, right? So every time you reach this point, you need to move like this for the next one. That's how the organization survive. If you don't do that, then it becomes very difficult. I mean, in fact, people who do not invest at this point, right? There is something called the kink, right? Hang on, let me just explain to you what a kink is, right? Okay. Yeah. So now, if you don't invest at this stage, at point B, right? What you will do is you will be at C or D. You would have less money. Now, depending on the every organization has political clicks, right? So you can get some amount for that particular product at this stage, right? So what happens is you will be able to move your revenue a little bit. Then again, since there is lack of support from the management, you will fall down, and finally you will go down. So this is how it will move, right? Even if there may be some increase in the revenue on the downhill, still it'll go down. So that's the reason why you must think of change at point B, right? Because C is late, D is too late, actually, right? And E is gone. You're already dead. All right. Okay. All right. Let's move on. All right. The next question. What does the equation below signify? Okay. Anupam says 2 is an equation to assess the exact time when the organization should change. Namita also says the exact time. Anupam says 3. Vinita says 3.
It's 3, sir.
Okay. 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 No problems. No problems. Yeah. All right. Okay. Anybody else? All right. Let's see what the answer is. All right. It's 3. It's an equation to assess the readiness of an organization to change. Right. So what does C stand for?
Change.
Change. Right. And R stands for?
Readiness.
I'm sorry?
Readiness for change, sir.
Is it readiness to change or is it resistance?
Sorry, sir. R stands for resistance to change.
Resistance to change.
Resistance to change.
All right. And D stands for?
Dissatisfaction with the status quo, sir.
Dissatisfaction with the status quo, the current state. Okay. And V and F?
V is actually the vision where you want to go.
V is vision where you want to go. And F?
F would probably be the first steps that you are going to change, what you are going to take to execute the change, sir.
Mr. Anupam, you are really good. you have been paying attention, and I think you are taking notes also.
I had actually not missed the last 2 classes. So
Lovely.
this weekend I was studying these 2 on the YouTube, sir.
Your memory is fantastic, right? Okay. So change is a function of these 3, right? Change is a function of these 3. Your vision, the first step you take, and the dissatisfaction. If you don't have any dissatisfaction with the status quo, you're not going to change, right? You are comfortable. You are in a comfort zone, right? So you need to move out of your comfort zone. You have to have some dissatisfaction with the status quo. You must have a vision of the future. Like change means what? Change to what, right? So change is fine, but change to what, right? From what to what you want to change. That's the vision. That's the scenario. You have to have a vision of the future, and you must also take the willing to take the first step, right? So even if you have the dissatisfaction, you have the vision, but if you are not willing to take the first step, then also you would not be able to change. So you require all 3. You require the dissatisfaction, you require the vision, and you require the first step. Any of these 3 is missing, then change will not happen. If you don't have dissatisfaction, then you are happy with the current state, and you are happy with the status quo. You are happy in your comfort zone, so you will not change, right? So if you do not have a vision, if you have D and F, but you don't have the vision, then you won't know where to move from the current state. You won't know where to move, right? So you have to have vision. And if you have a dissatisfaction, you have the vision, but you don't have any clue as to how to move, what first step to move, to take, then also the change will not happen. But if DVF is not greater than R, the resistance to change or the cost of change. So R is basically either the resistance to change or the cost of change. Like if the cost of change is too high, right, then you would willy-nilly stay where you are without changing, right? So your DVF must be greater than R. Then only you will be able to change. Else you will not be able to change, right? So okay, so this we already discussed. C is for change. D is for dissatisfaction with the status quo. V is for the clear vision. F is for the first steps towards the vision. And R is the resistance to change, or it can also be the cost of change, right? So all right. Okay, so is it true or false? Organization culture is a pattern of shared basic assumptions that are learned by a group as it solves its problems of external adaptation and internal integration that has worked well enough to be considered valid and therefore be taught to new members as the correct way to perceive, think, and feel in relation to those problems. Is it true or false?
True, sir.
True. Okay. Okay. Most of you are saying true. Okay. Can someone comment on this definition of culture, organizational culture? Yeah, go ahead.
It could be taken as the basic assumptions that a group has made whenever an organization is created. The members, the initial members, start working on certain basic assumptions towards that organization. These basic assumptions enable them to integrate the individuals into a collective organization. These assumptions enable them to adapt to the external environment in which the organization is operating. And over a period of time, this becomes the hallmark of the organization. That is how they look after each other, and that is how the organization works. So therefore, in future, this becomes a valid observation for all future employees or people who are getting into the organization. Just to give you an example, in the armed forces, camaraderie is one of the basic characteristics.
Right.
You will look after the other guy's back also, because if today he is in trouble, you have to bail him out. Tomorrow when you get shot, he will lift you on his shoulders and take you to safety. That is the basic essence,
yeah,
with which the organization started, and now this has become the organizational culture. You are not living for yourself, you are not working for yourself, you are working as a collective whole. That is the sum of two individuals becomes more than two. So that becomes an organizational culture.
Very good. In fact, I am really happy that you gave this example of the armed forces, right? Camaraderie. I'm reminded of an episode. There was this anthropologist. Her name is Margaret Mead. Have you heard of her? She was a very renowned anthropologist. And she was once asked in her class what do you think, when do you think the human civilization started? You're getting a point. When do you think the human civilization started? Right? So one student asked her, and the students, they were expecting something like when the human being started to from being a hunter-gatherer, they started to settle down and start cultivation, or they domesticated the animals and used them for their purpose. That's when this one started. And some other people expected that when the human beings learn to use tools, the stone tools, or shaped stones into tools, to that's when the civilization started, right? So they were very surprised when she said that when the modern man found a femur bone healed, that's when the human civilization started. You know what is the femur? Femur is the longest bone in the human body, and it actually joins your feet, your ankle to your knee, right? That's the femur bone, right? And that is the longest bone in the the hip and the
hip and the knees, sir.
Knees, right? That's the femur bone, right? And that's the longest bone, and it heals means like think of the ancient world where everybody the human beings or animals, if your femur bone is broken, right, you are easy meat. You cannot run, you cannot hunt for your food, you cannot run away from danger, right? And either somebody will eat you up, or you would die of hunger, right? That's the only way you can that's the only consequence of breaking your femur bone. Now, a healed femur bone means what? It means that somebody, right? When this particular person broke the bone, somebody stayed back. Somebody carried him to safety. Somebody brought food for this person for about, say, 20 to 30 days, because that's the time in nature, without any medical intervention, that's the time it takes to for the bone to heal, right? Which means this person survived for 30 days, right? Somebody cared for him, somebody provided for him, somebody carried him to safety, somebody fed him, right? That's when the Margaret Mead said that's when human civilization started, right? If you think of it, you would actually get goosebumps, right, as to what the answer is, right? Yeah, that reminded me when Anupam said that camaraderie. This is what camaraderie is, and camaraderie is part of human civilization. No other animal in the world would actually be civilized without camaraderie, taking care of others, right? Selflessly. All right. So how does organizational culture take shape? It takes shape from it actually starts with the people who set up that particular organization. It comes from the values of the handful of people who start that particular organization. There's a company called what is that company? Say the Infosys, right? So Infosys was built by what? Around 7-8 people who broke away from another IT company, right? But the culture which the founding fathers of Infosys they started with, like, so that actually formed going forward the culture of the organization, right? And they like your values. It builds your worldview, right? And if your worldview works, then it gets crystallized, right? And when it gets crystallized, then uh, it aids productivity, it aids performance, and you stick to it because if it is useful and if it is working, then there's no reason why you should change your values or your organizational culture. And then you try and transmit that organization culture to the people who join you subsequently. That becomes the organizational culture. That's how organizational cultures get formed. That's how the organizational culture get crystallized and transmitted. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. So this is true. All right. So I think this is the last question. Yeah, this is the last question. All right. So which of the following? Okay, I've already shown you. Right. So C is the correct answer. Which of the following is the correct? The artifacts, the espoused beliefs and values, and the underlying assumptions. Right. So this is as far as the organizational culture is concerned. So organizational culture is like what is it called? Iceberg, right? So the artifacts are the ones which you see, right? And the espoused beliefs and values and underlying assumptions, they are below water. Okay. So as far as say for example, wherever you're working, what are the artifacts? How do you know what is the culture of the organization? What are the visible symbols of your organization? You have organizational values, right? Core values. Wherever you are working, anybody in your organization,
yes, sir.
you have mission,
Yeah,
vision, values. Mission.
Yeah, it is there, sir.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So how do you know? How do you know what is your core values?
It has been continuously been told to us, and we observe also.
The policies and the strategies are formed based on those values. For example, respect and dignity is part of it. Then in PMS, we are allowed to have our own valuation and then the manager.
Right, right. And in fact, these are there on the walls of your office also, नहीं? वो उसको frame करके टंगाया भी जाता है. These are our core values. This is our mission. This is our vision, right? आपके it will be there on your website also. So our mission, vision, and values are these, right? So these are basically artifacts which are visible, right? Now, the espoused beliefs and values are different. It can be, if you are living your values, then the B and C will be and artifacts and your beliefs will be the same. But if you are saying something and doing something exactly different, then your espoused beliefs and values are at variance with the artifacts, right? Now, the underlying assumptions are the bottommost, right? Your underlying assumptions, like if you are a theory O person, that you believe that if the organizational capability is developed first, it will lead to the organization performing better in the economic field as well. But you are willing to wait for 7 to 10 years for that to happen, right? So that's your underlying assumption, right? You are a theory O person. But if you are a theory E person, you don't have any faith in the organizational capability leading to profit, right? So what do? You don't invest in coaching or training or any kind of employee development, right? So they are not must-haves. You would be looking at, say, cost cutting. You would be looking at hiring, firing. You would be looking at product divestment, right? So your underlying assumption will lead to your espoused beliefs, and espoused beliefs will actually be visible on your wall as your mission, vision, values, right? So this is how we progress. Okay, so now I will end this session with a story, right? How what we do and what we think, right, and what we believe in, it can be different, right? And there's no integrity. This is a story from Gandhiji's life, right? And this is a real story, real life story. So once Gandhiji had gone to UK, and since he was there in UK, England, the English parliamentarians, they thought, we have heard a lot about Gandhiji. Why don't we invite him to the English Parliament and request him to speak to us? So they sent out an invitation to Gandhiji, and Gandhiji came, and he spoke, right? He spoke for about 2 hours, and every member of parliament in the English Parliament was spellbound, and they were listening to him in rapt attention. Now, once Gandhiji finished his speech and he was coming out, one of the MPs, he caught hold of Mahadev Desai. Mahadev Desai was the secretary to Gandhi. And he asked Mahadev Desai, what about Gandhi? He speaks for 2 hours, and 2 hours extempo, and he doesn't even have a piece of paper which he would refer to. And how does he do it? How does he do it? So Mahadev Desai said, Gandhi is a person who speaks what he thinks and he does what he speaks. So there's no discrepancy between his thought, his speech, and his action, right? Whereas you and me, we would think something, say something else, and do something entirely different. So if we do something different from what we say and say something different from what we think, for us, we would require to have a notebook. For us, we would require to have files to refer to कि हम लोगों ने हमने उस दिन क्या बोला था, so that when I speak now, there should not be any discrepancy, right, from what I had said earlier. So for that, we would require all kinds of gadgets, all kinds of notebooks or files. But Gandhi, he does what he says and he says what he thinks. So there's absolutely no discrepancy in any of these three, right? So that syncs with what we have on our screen. That is the underlying assumptions, espoused beliefs and values, and artifacts. If all the three are together, then we don't need to have artifacts differently from our policies and our underlying assumptions, right? Okay, thank you guys. Thank you for joining this session, and thank you for participating. Today was the best of the 4 sessions which we have had, because most of you did participate and shared your views. Thank you so very much. Any questions? Okay, all right. Thank you so much, and we will see each other next Sunday. Thank you so much.
Thank